This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, as you know, I was over in Syria in February. We were supposed to be there reporting on the last stand of ISIS. While I was there, I met very interesting personality, Dr. Ann Speckhard, and she kind of runs an institute that is doing some pretty amazing things with the refugees that escaped from there and with the actual former ISIS fighters themselves. Maybe not former, maybe actual ISIS fighters. And so a very courageous person going into the prisons and talking with some of these people. So I want to have Ann on today. Dr. Speckhard, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome. And you're the brave one, Chuck. You went all the way to the front line in Gene. I go in the prisons, but I don't go to the front line.
You don't go to the front line. No. Well, you didn't miss a whole lot. I mean,
one of my friends,
mayhem up there, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I heard ISIS was flying drones and dropping bombs, and I missed all that.
Yeah, they were. So the reason I wanted to have you on this time is we've had you on the show before, but I saw an article that you wrote talking about how an ISIS resurgence might be in the works because of the number of prisoners, I guess you want to call them, or I don't know what you call them, refugees or whatever, that are ISIS families, wives and children, staying in some of these camps in Syria, like especially the one at Al-Hol. Tell me what you've experienced there and what you think the upshot of all that's going to be.
Well, I've been going in and out of northern Syria, which is SDF controlled territory, for the last year, almost every other month, sometimes every month. And we've been doing our interviews in the prisons and in the camps. The camps are where the women are held and the children. So the camps are Ainisa, Camp Roche, and Camp Al-Hol. And there's been a lot of press coming out about Al-Hol, that it's a big radicalizing center. Here's my take, Chuck. Most of the people that were in ISIS have given it up because they were totally de-radicalized by ISIS itself. ISIS was so disappointing. They made all kinds of promises that they're going to make a caliphate, a utopian society, that they're going to live by Islamic ideals. And they were corrupt, morally bankrupt, non-Islamic, and disgusting. So most of the foreign fighters figured that out eventually. And they particularly figured it out in Hajin and later in Baghuz, when they realized they were just cannon fodder for the Iraqis and the Syrians who were enriching themselves, who had all the gold from ISIS and ran away and left them holding the bag. So they're all in prison, and the Iraqis and the Syrian leaders ran away. So where's Baghdadi? Where is Baghdadi? And if you ask one of the guys that made it all the way to Baghuz, where is Baghdadi, you will hear them curse Baghdadi. So I don't think that ISIS is resurging from the prisoners themselves or from the camps. But I will say there is a contingent in the camps among the women that were told by their husbands, honey, you go stay in the camps. This is a hudna, and this is an Islamic thing. Like, we're at a temporary peace, and we're waiting until we gather our strength back up to attack again. So, honey, you stay in the camps, and we'll come and get you. And I don't know if you've seen Baghdadi's audio or listened to his audio, but he just put out an audio, I think, yesterday. And it basically says we need to storm the camps and storm the prisons and release all the ISIS people. And ISIS has done this in the past, so that's no joke. The SDF are our allies, the YPG and the SDF, and they're doing a great job. Their prisons are totally overcrowded because when you were in Hajin, you saw those people surrendering, and Baghuz was even worse. So there's 70,000 people in Camp Hol. And the SDF is totally overwhelmed. They have prison riots, they have riots in the camps, and then they have these crazy, still dedicated ISIS people attacking camp guards, biting them, starting fires on other prisoners' tents, killing other prisoners, doing every kind of heinous, horrible thing they could do because they still believe in ISIS. But the good news is the majority of people that are in custody have given up on ISIS, and they know that ISIS is a big liar.
Okay, so I mean, what's the solution for this? How do you separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak? If you're the SDF commander in charge of this camp, and you're seeing, the majority of the people there going, "Yeah, we're done with this. We were misled. We were sold a bill of goods, and we don't want to be ISIS anymore." These are the wives and the children, of course. But then there are
And
these enforcers who
these
are
are the
going
men.
around, and if you say that, they will kill you. They'll burn your tent down, whatever. How do you handle that?
Well, our project, as you know, Chuck, is interviewing prisoners and camp people, anybody that's been in ISIS, and trying to get their whole story. I'm a psychologist. I go for the whole story. So we spend an hour and a half to 5 hours with people. And we ask them at the end if they will denounce ISIS. And if they do, we cut a short counter narrative of them. But people are terrified, especially in the female camps, to engage with us. And they ask us, please hide my identity, hide my face, hide my name. Because if these enforcers find out, they'll burn my tent, they'll kill my kids. And it's so horrible. So my advice is, as a policy, I mean, the SDF is our allies, and Turkey's screaming that they're PKK, but I don't see any evidence of that. And, maybe there's some that are PKK, but I don't see that evidence. They're treating their prisoners fairly. They're not torturing them. They're not giving them death sentences. They're working faithfully with us. They helped on the ground, gave their own lives to fight ISIS. And won, with our good help, of course, but they need help now. Their prisons are overwhelmed, their staff is overwhelmed, and they need help. They need Europeans and other countries to take their detainees back home to face justice, and we're helping with that. Our center is International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism. We're right now working with the Germans on the cases that we interviewed and trying to work on getting them repatriated. All the countries need to repatriate their people, and they need to face justice at home. They need to go to prison, and they need to go on rehabilitation programs.
I saw that Germany just did that. They just took back some of their prisoners, or at least the children. And that's kind of to me, seems like a no-brainer. Take the children out of those camps and take them back to their countries. But many of these kids are not foreigners. They're either Iraqi or they're from Syria. What do you do with those ones?
Well, in Camp Hold, there's 30,000 Syrians and there's 30,000 Iraqis. The Iraqis, half of them have asked to go home, which probably is a good sign, meaning that they're not ISIS. Because if they were ISIS, they wouldn't ask to go home because they'd face a death penalty at home. And they need to be sent home. They need to be processed as quickly as possible. The Syrians are the SDF, I just really have to give these people credit. They're amazing. They're running a rehabilitation program, and they're trying to release people that they have vetted as no longer part of the group. And they give them back to their tribal leaders or their community leaders, and they hope for the best. And that is a dicey thing. But on the other hand, the SDF is trying to bring in all the ethnicities and not just be Kurdish dominated, although the YPG is Kurdish. And they're trying to be very fair and very democratic. And I'll tell you, every time I go there, I'm so impressed. They're feminist, they're democratic, they're fair. And the detainees themselves tell us they treat us fairly. And that's not what I hear in other countries.
Well, so I guess there's only three choices. You could either let them go, just let them out of the camp. You could send them back to their home countries somehow, or you could try to keep them in the camp. Keeping them in the camp is really not an option for much longer because the SDF just doesn't have the manpower or the money to support them in those camps. Letting them go willy-nilly really is a very bad choice. So probably the best of those three bad choices is to send them back to their home countries. Would you agree?
They definitely need to go to their home countries. These people are radicalized in Belgium and Germany and France. They were raised in those countries. They became disillusioned in those countries, and they started to believe in ISIS, and they need to go home. They need to face justice at home, and their home government needs to solve the problems that, Belgium and France flushed the toilet. They said, all you jihadis, welcome, go to Syria. And they didn't care what they did in Syria. But I'm sorry, it's their responsibility. It's their citizens, and they now need to bring them back. And Europe has developed good de-radicalization programs in the prisons. Not everybody's going to be de-radicalized. There's going to be true believers that never give it up, but there's plenty of people that have given it up. And if they're set on a good path, these people say, I just want to live my life. I just want to be with my children. I want to forget that ISIS ever existed. I'm sorry, I believe their lies. I was wrong. And the part that they don't get is the harm they did to other people. They blame ISIS as though ISIS is something other. And if they're in a good rehabilitation program, they need to own up and say, I was ISIS. I was part of a machinery that hurt other people. And they need to be
Lost you.
Are you still there?
Yeah, hang on a second there.
Yeah, you were kind of lightning there.
Yeah, the lights went off for a second. Okay, keep going.
But I have faith in Europe. Europe has developed good rehabilitation programs, and they can.
Like? Explain to me what you mean by that. What do they do?
Well, I developed the rehabilitation program that we ran in Iraq for 20,000 detainees and 800 juveniles. And at first, the idea was just to have Islamic challenge. And that's an imam that comes in, a scholar, that says, brother, you've got Islam all wrong. And that's really, really good, because some of these people, they do what they believe Islam tells them to do. So like Huda Mathana, she's American. She was a Yemeni American. She believed that if she didn't make hijrah, which is to go to a land ruled by Sharia, and if she didn't go serve the Islamic State once the Caliph had declared it, that she would burn in hell. And now she knows that's ridiculous. But at the time, her beliefs were so strong that she followed her beliefs. So somebody like that, if you help them see you've been lied to, this isn't even your Islam, then they readjust and they say, I want to follow my faith. I don't want to be a sinner. I don't want to burn in hell. And they readjust. But other people have psychological issues, and it's not going to be addressed solely through Islam. It's, I didn't belong to my society. They didn't want me. I'm Moroccan Belgian. And, they told me that even with a college education, I couldn't have a good job. And I hated them. And I thought ISIS is going to make something for Muslims and it's going to be good. So you have to work with them psychologically to address where they came from and then redirect them to a peaceful path and to something that serves their lives, because they thought ISIS was going to serve them. Nobody joins a terrorist group just because they're a hateful, horrible person. They join because they think it's going to bring them something.
Yeah, right.
You have to sell them on what will really bring them something.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, actually, with Dave Eubank, that, with Christianity, with Islam, it's kind of all about dying the right way in order to get to heaven, doing the right thing and dying the right way, doing the right, series of acts in your life, and then dying the right way in order to get to heaven. Whereas in Christianity, all the dying's already been done for us, and it's just about living in gratitude for that. And so it's just almost a mirror image. It's so different. It's hard, I think, for Americans to understand that, even if you're not a Christian, having grown up in a culture that is steeped in Christianity and those values that do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, it's difficult for us to understand the mindset, and we just sort of imagine these people are just evil people. But if I learned anything when I was there in February, it's that these are just people like us. They have needs, they have wants, they just want to live a good life. They're not, absolutely evil. They might have been deceived by evil, but they themselves, for the most part, are not.
And think about some of those women you saw. Some of those women, their husbands tell me, my woman was dressed in a niqab and people would spit at her on the streets. Imagine being spit at for following your religion. And if you get to them and help them psychologically and Islamically to understand, moderate Islam does not teach any of this hateful, horrible. It's not Islam. What ISIS and Al-Qaeda are selling in Al-Shabaab is not Islam. But they believe that it's Islam, and they believe that that's their duty.
That's the only way you can get to heaven. You got to do what you got to do. But then my question is then, what do you do with the remainder? What do you do with these people who are the diehards that are never going to swear off Islam or this Sharia, Wahhabist, very extremist form of Islam? What do you do with those people? Unfortunately, in You can't just, like I think Ann Coulter said one time, just kill their leaders and convert them all to Christianity. You can't line them up against the wall and shoot them. So what do you do? Just keep them in prison for the rest of their lives?
Well, there are people that maybe do need to stay in prison, and there's people that have killed too many people or raped too many people that, we probably can't let them go free. And that's the sad fact of, when you're a horrible criminal. But I would say I work with a sheikh, an Islamic scholar. He helped me in Buka as well. And he knows Islam inside and outside, and he can argue with these guys. And you take somebody like that, you bring them into prison, and they will be tongue-tied. Wow. And he will take them to the same place that you and I believe in: forgiveness, justice, love. Because moderate Islam believes like we do. I mean, they don't have the savior like we do, but they do believe in forgiveness, and they do believe in justice and goodness.
I remember having a conversation in Jordan one time with, where these guys, the Muslims, were asking me, well, America's a Christian country. We see, this is them talking, we see the television that comes out of America, and how do you justify that? I mean, if that's Christianity, that's pretty disgusting. And I say, no, we disagree with that kind of filth coming out of Hollywood or whatever. And then they just kind of looked at me and said, well, why don't you kill those people then? And so I had to explain to them, we value the concept of liberty. That means you got to be free to be able to do the wrong thing as so that you can be free also to do the right thing. Doing the right thing under duress, being forced to do the right thing, there's no moral points in that. But doing the right thing when you're free to do the wrong thing, that's where the moral justice comes in. So trying to explain that to them, I know there are a lot of Muslims around the world that really don't understand that. And again, just like we don't understand much of where Islam is coming from, where they are just sort of appalled by the same things that we're appalled by, but in their culture, you just don't stand for it. You just go kill those people.
That's true. That's true.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We're out of time for today's podcast, but thank you very much. It's so insightful, as always, to talk to you. And I hope we can get you back again sometime. Thank you, Dr. Ed Speckhard.
God bless.
God bless you. Take care.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.